Hi, I'm Murray Hidary. I'm the creator and composer of MindTravel. It's too easy to look at, the low-hanging fruit of polarization versus can we dig a little deeper beneath the surface and find the commonality and find the unification opportunities. I think they're there. I know they're there.
Welcome to Season 2 of Brave Talks. Today, I interview Murray Hidary, a composer, entrepreneur, adventurer, teacher, lifelong learner, and dear friend of mine. Murray has a wealth of wisdom and a unique perspective on how pain and beauty in life can be windows into deeper connection. Murray is a multi-disciplinary artist and tech pioneer, and the creator and composer of his musical experience, MindTravel. He tours his innovative, immersive experiences like his live piano 360 visual experiences, MindTravel SilentWalks, and underwater meditations to audiences across the globe in person and, in recent times, virtually. To date, MindTravel has been experienced in over 70 cities by over 150,000 people in countries across the globe. Murray is also a certified meditation teacher and grief counselor. In part 2 of this conversation, I speak with Murray about how he's utilized music as an engine of connectivity, healing, and legacy, creating space for the kind of storytelling that brings people closer together. One of the most inspiring things when I think about your work is the bravery and courage. And maybe it wasn't bravery and courage. Maybe it was the only path for you to say, I'm going to create music that is, going to take me through this portal or this grief that I'm going through and transform me, hopefully. But also to share that with people and to share the healing, which you can talk about, of your music with people who are experiencing grief, who aren't experiencing grief. I listen to MindTravel a lot simply because I find it really peaceful, and I love to read when I'm listening to it. Or last night I did a solo date under the stars and read a book and was listening to music, and I didn't have to talk to my waiter at all. It was fantastic. And, it's just really peaceful and healing. And I don't understand the science behind it, but I feel peace and calm and also inspiration and happiness and a lot of emotions when I listen to your music.
Yeah. It took me a number of years to put out publicly what I was doing personally, privately, intimately in my own home. What MindTravel is today, which, for those listening that are not familiar with it, it's a musical journey. It's a musical experience. I sit at the piano, and, we usually gather in, outdoor settings, be it, Santa Monica Beach or Central Park. I mean, you got to imagine these like beautiful, epic nature locations where, the music and nature and community conspire together to create those healing ingredients. And of course, now, we're recording this during the pandemic, and I've continued to do them virtually. But still, those elements are there. But it took me a while to get to the point where I felt comfortable sharing it publicly. I've been playing piano, since I was 5, 6 years old. It was always a part of me. I studied classical composition in university. So, music was always a deep part of my life, but I did it for myself mainly. It was almost like music really is my religion. It's my pathway to both emotional depth, emotional understanding myself, and understanding the universe. And I actually think that all religions attempt at creating shedding some light on both of those buckets, right? Both those fields of the human experience, right? It's like my own personal experience of like, how do I move through my emotional state with what's happening in my life, my relationships, and how do I think about myself in the bigger context of the universe? Like, who am I, and like, what's going on in this universe, and how is this all working, right? Those are the kind of the two sides of pretty much any religion or system. And for me, music is the pathway to both of those. If we look at the universe from the point of view of it being an infinite spectrum of vibrations expressed through matter and everything that we experience and see, well, music is the language of vibration by definition. Music is vibration. And so with music, I'm using the language of the universe, right, to connect with the universe. I mean, that's what's happening. And there's no distinction ultimately between the external universe and my internal universe for any of us, right? So that's what it's bridging, right? Bridging this internal landscape and this external landscape that we think is separate, but ultimately is one and the same. And that's the collapsing, that's the merging, that's the union that we're trying to achieve. And union, the more union we have, is the more love we have. The more separation is the more fear. So that's where this all boils down to, right? That love fear equation. The calculus of the universe is about unity and separation and how we navigate that. So when it comes to the music, well, then of course, like, well, what music am I playing? Am I playing, Broadway musicals, or am I playing, something different? And for me, the music that I express, really comes from deep within and from the far cosmos, kind of coming together. And the two, it turns out for me, sound the same. When I imagine playing the music, playing the soundtrack, imagine playing the soundtrack to the furthest reaches of the cosmos, those beautiful nebula, and the cosmic wonder that we see out there. And then I think of, what is the soundtrack of my innermost landscape, of my innermost cosmos, my innermost psyche, my innermost vibrational emotional state? What does that sound like? Well, the two start to blend and they sound very similar to me. And so now, when you put in all the emotional stuff we go through, I think mind travel at its core aspires to meet people exactly where they're at in the listening. So, whatever you're going through, and of course, I don't know what you're going through personally, meaning any listener, right? I don't know what the listener is going through in detail. But I do know that we all move through the arc of the human experience in roughly the same kind of way. Of course, there's people that have very, very intense, very tragic circumstances than others, of course. But generally, comparatively, and relatively speaking, we're all moving through the human experience in, a certain kind of way that is relatable. And so that's what the music aspires to do, is meet people wherever they are. I'm going to be with you and feel the pain with you and tell you that I'm right here and that I've got you in the music. And then together, note by note, we're going to rise up together. That's my aspiration. Now, that's what I do for myself. So I just attempt to do that for others. And, that's at least my intention with it. And that really encompasses this idea of true beauty, right? I don't try to create pretty music. Some of it might be pretty, but I really don't try to create pretty music. I try to create beautiful music. And for me, creating beauty encompasses both joy and pain, including the grief, including the loss, acknowledging it and sitting with it, and then transmuting it. But I mean, that's what's available in music. If we listen for it, it's there.
So what you're saying is it's like a sophisticated country music.
It's just like country music, really. I mean,
cosmic.
Just forget about what I'm saying.
Let me just give you the cliff notes, guys.
But I'll tell you, look, if you're into country music, which I know you are, but look, I'm not into country music, but I respect it. But I can appreciate it, because what's happening in country music?
Your dog's dying, your boyfriend's breaking up with you.
I mean, it's storytelling, right? Yeah, something's going on like that. So there's a storytelling that you're connecting with, and yeah, I appreciate it. It's not my go-to, but I get it.
Sometimes you need the surface level to balance out.
It's funny. I often think about music as food. And what I mean by that is, we don't eat the same foods the same food every day for every meal. I mean, that, just wouldn't work. We have certain foods that are, nutritious and entrees and like really sustain, give us, sustenance, give us our nutrients. And then we have, our like naughty foods, our desserts, our, things that we eat from time to time. Now, if every meal was all that naughty food, we wouldn't be very healthy. We would not be sustainable. But when you mix it all up, then it's great, that kind of diversity with what we eat. And it's the same with music. I think it's the music that feeds the soul. Ultimately, it's the soundtrack for the soul. Connecting to that deepest part of us, I think, is the most fulfilling, thing we can do, because it then informs the choices we have going forward. If we're just living on the surface, then we don't even know what's available.
How many of us live on the surface forever, our whole lives, and try and keep the armor on and not expose our true selves?
You'd have to know that there's something below the surface to even know that it's a choice to operate from there. That's a journey of discovery, and you're either on that journey or you're not. And hopefully, through a more connected world, through a friend, through a family member, through scrolling through whatever, you somehow stumble into a wormhole that takes you into something that's deeper, something that opens a portal for you. It may not be, where you grew up. It may not be. Look, I grew up in a very religious, orthodox, community, and it has, tremendous benefits and wonderful values. But the life I lead today is quite divergent from that. And for me, I stumbled across a book called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, a very famous book. But I was probably 16 or 17 at the time. And I read that cover to cover riding the F train subway from Brooklyn going to Manhattan, missed my stop because I couldn't put the book down, and ended up in the Bronx. And, it opened my mind. So I got a peek beneath the surface, right, by reading that book. Now, if that book didn't come in my life, okay, maybe there would have been something else. But there's something that's going to come into our lives that act as a catalyst for a new portal, a new doorway to open. But it's still our choice whether we're going to go through it and go down that road, or we're going to turn around and stay in the comfort zone.
That's the power of storytelling for me. When Amber Valletta, she said, "I'm coming out to you today as an addict," and just those piercing words in open air, and not, sugar coated or, it was just plain and simple. That was her first line that she delivered. It gave me the freedom to feel. For the first time, I had full body liposuction in 16 different places of my body to try and fit the industry's idea of how precise my curves should be. Meanwhile, I had, blood clotting disorder where I risked my life to do it. I didn't tell my mom I did it. Risked my life to try and fit what the world wants me to look like, also act like, all of the things that culture puts you in a box and says, this is what's acceptable. And that was 4 months before Amber had said, I'm coming out to you today as an addict. And I was on the cover of magazines at the same time, which was the irony of it all, right? Like, I love myself. I love my body. That's why I'm here at this wellness symposium, is because I'm being honored for body positivity. And the truth of it was, I was the one that needed body positivity the most. I needed my own medicine, and I needed to find that. And when Amber told the truth, her truth, without shame or judgment, it unlocked my story and my understanding of how powerful storytelling and truth-telling and bravery and courage can be. I grew up in a military family, very conservative, still the same family, right? Still in this family. But I lived for them. I had never known a life for Emily. Like, be you, which is, my mom would tell me all the time, but I still felt the pressure to try and fit it be that puzzle piece that fits perfectly into my family, into culture, into this modeling job, into being a wife, whatever it is, all these expectations of trying to fit in so perfectly. And so yeah, like storytelling and honesty and you choosing your music and delivering that to all of us and saying like, here's my truth, and maybe this can, unlock something within you or give you space to feel and to experience yourself maybe for the first time. So I feel like it's all the same when I write words, when I share my story, when Amber talks and she tells her truth, when you share your music. We're all creating space for people to possibly find their own medicine, and whether it's magic or medicine or your purpose, whatever you want to call it, like you found it. And I hope that everyone can have that experience.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. I think I do view what I do as musical storytelling. I don't. I don't use words in my music that I give the details or specific about about that, but it's an abstract storytelling, which it's kind of like if you think about the world of painting, right? There's abstract painting and realist painting, but abstract painting has such a power to it because you look at it and you can see what you need to see in it, right? Wherever you're at. That's the power of abstraction. And the same thing with music. You can listen to the music and you can hear your life story in the music, and use it in the way you need to, because ultimately we all are a reflection of each other. As much as we think we're so individualistic, we're so unique, we're so special, we're so this, we're so that. And yeah, and that's true to a certain extent. And at the same time, we are all deep reflections of each other, especially in such an interconnected, world, hyper-connected world, where the influence of things moves so quickly around the world that to say that we're not a reflection of each other would be just being in denial of that. So when one person shares, and we see ourselves in that, there's a shift that's made, and that's how it propagates. And absent that sharing, what happens in the absence of Amber telling her story? What happens in the absence of you telling your story? Well, then the separation permeates. The separation continues. All right, it's a separation that propagates, not the unity. And so now people look at you and they're like, "Well, no, I got to look like that." It just keeps going. Unfortunately, that story keeps going. It's like one story or the other, right? Something's being communicated. Those magazine covers, they're communicating, they're storytelling. They're saying something, to women, to men, to Instagram. Everything is storytelling. Everything is a conversation. David White, the one of my favorite poets, he talks about that. He says, everything he looks out in the world, and everything's a conversation, right? You look out and you see, the mountains, the trees, the clouds, the people. I mean, everything is in conversation because everything is storytelling. Everything is dynamic. Everything is interplaying with everything else. Nothing is isolated. And so, yeah, that magazine cover, that Instagram feed is telling a story, and we're perceiving it the way we perceive it based on our own filters. But absent someone saying, "Here's the actual story," we're going to make it up, and it's usually not going to be great because of our tendency to shift to fear, to wanting to fit in, to wanting to look good. These are default positions of the human psyche. We can transcend it, but that takes work. That takes work. And so the work of people like you and Amber and all of us is, we put out there stories that can counter that narrative, so people have a choice. So people are like, okay, you know what? Now I don't feel so bad about myself. I don't feel so bad about my body. I don't feel so bad about feeling grief. I don't feel so bad about all this loss, because you know what? Someone else felt it, got through it, and what I actually thought was actually a lie. What I actually thought was not not reality at all. And now I've got a new perspective on it, and I've got a new freedom around it. I mean, that's powerful.
it's so hard to achieve in a hyper polarized, inauthentic world. At least that's my projection, where everyone's doing TikTok videos that, are giving tips and whatever it is, information that may or may not be true. Everyone's an expert. One day you're a student, and the next day you're a teacher and an expert. And Matt and I have had this conversation. We had it this morning where, I've made a decision to get back on social media. I had taken a sabbatical, or I had actually just left completely for like 8 months, never even looked at it. And it was so great. It gave me time to come back to listening to my own pulse and my own heartbeat and my own desires. I decided to get back into Instagram in service of others and social media in service of others, because there are so many homogenous messages that are still circulating, that are constantly circulating every second, and they're bottomless, that are all about materialism, body image, extreme dieting or orthorexia, whatever. The list goes on, right? Like that's what's filtered in my feed. Extreme spirituality, like spiritual shaming, like, there's so much that you can compare yourself to. So I decided to get back into it to share things like this, because maybe that is the window for someone who's like, thank you for giving me that 1 second on Instagram where I could listen to this, click a link and listen to this conversation, because I haven't heard the truth like that in a while. And it opened me up to something deeper within me.
Yeah. And look, it's, people take what's in front of them, or what they're, most naturally attracted and gravitating to express wherever they're at. So, we look out at social media, and like you said, there's all these, newly minted experts in this and that. And a minute ago, they didn't know anything about it. Right. And however inauthentic it may seem to us, on some level, it is authentic to them. And it's just the path they got to go through. And that's the tough part. And that's the opportunity for us to really exercise our acceptance and tolerance muscles, and to open up and say, okay, look, I may not agree with that, but that's where they're at. I'm going to honor that. And you know what? I'm going to put this out there. So, hey, maybe they'll see it, and maybe it'll push them in this direction or that direction. That's really all we can do. We're never going to live in a world where everyone's going to agree on everything, and nor should we. And so, there's always going to be a diversity of opinion and lifestyle, and I think that has to be okay. And we have to find a way to continue to see our reflection in the other, even when we don't like what we see. And that's, I think, the ultimate challenge. Especially in such a world that as you're describing, is such so polarizing. It is so polarizing if you look at it in one way, and it's incredibly unifying if you look at it in another way. But we have to find more opportunities to look at it through this other lens. That's, I think, what we have to do. It's too easy to look at the low hanging fruit of polarization, versus, can we dig a little deeper beneath the surface and find the commonality and find the unification opportunities? I think they're there. I know they're there. I know that I've experienced them, with my music, with others. I took my tour last year, and I had hundreds of people gathered in a huge circles, listening to music, sharing the feelings of universal connection and love. And in Yiddish we say kvelling. Okay, I was like, like I was welling up. I was like feeling such love and affinity and connection. So all the other polarization stuff is nonsense at the end of the day. Underneath it all, it's, of course it's confrontational, it's provoking, it's going to push our buttons, it's going to trigger us. Yeah, we'll work through it. We'll work through it. But ultimately, underneath it all, the human experience is undeniable, and it's beautiful, and it's real, and it's there to be had. It's there to be tasted. It's there to be heard if we're willing to listen.
Yeah. I pulled a quote from Maria Popova's Brain Pickings, which I love, her newsletter, and I've sent it to you before. This one just reminded me so much of your work and of everyone's artistry when they're putting out what's authentic to themselves. So she writes, every artist makes what they make with the whole of who they are, with the totality of experiences, beliefs, impressions, obsessions, childhood confusions, heartbreaks, inner conflicts, and contradictions that constellate a self. To be an artist is to put this combinatorial self in the service of furnishing occasions for unselfing in others. That may be why the lives of artists have such singular allure as case studies and models of turning the confusion, complexity, and uncertainty of life into something beautiful and lasting, like your music, something that harmonizes the disquietude and dissonance of living. One thing that I think about when I listen to MindTravel is that you wouldn't even have to physically be here and your music will outlive you. And it makes me think of legacy, and you will always have a piece of you. And I think that that's just so powerful. And the pieces that you'll leave behind are love and connection and unity. And I just think that that's so powerful.
There's you just reminded me of a story. I've actually never, I don't think I've ever told this story, but I was, so my sister played the piano a little bit too. All my siblings, we were all took lessons. I mean, I took it more seriously as a profession, but everybody played, on a basic level, and my sister as well. And in my parents' house, they have a piano, which I helped them pick out many, many, many years ago. And it's a piano that actually has a recording device built into the piano, so you can record yourself and it plays it back, like it plays the keys for you, like the keys move, right? It's like a player piano, right? So I was visiting them, I don't know, maybe it was a couple years after my sister died, and I went to the piano and I was just going through some of the music books and all that stuff that sits in the piano bench for years that you forget about, right? And I open the piano bench and I find all this stuff, and I'm going through it, sifting through it, and I find one of these recording discs, unlabeled, that was just sitting in there. And I was like, I wonder what's on this recording disc. And I pop the recording disc into the machine in the piano, and the piano starts to play the Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven, the first movement, the slow movement. And it was a piece my sister was learning at the time, when she was around 22, 23. And I remember hearing her play it, every now and then when I was visiting the house. And I remember her playing it even at my piano when she came over. And she had this way of playing it that was so sweet, but also there were some, difficult sections. And she would always have, a trouble with a couple of the sections. And I'm listening to this recording. The piano's actually playing. The notes are moving. The keys are moving. It becomes like a ghost playing the piano. And the same sections, of course, that she always had trouble with, right? Like play on the piano, like in this way, right? It's literally her playing. And it was just so beautifully flawed. It was beautifully representative. And it was her right there at the piano. So talk about, music and a recording existing after we, depart. I mean, it doesn't get more real than that. Okay. Like that was and it connected me so powerfully to her in that moment, right? It's not like listening to a professional recording of Moonlight Sonata, right? I mean, okay, that might remind me of her, but this was her actually playing it, right, at the piano. When I really think about what legacy means, we typically think of the thing that we leave, right? Like the building with your name on it, right? The hospital that you funded, that's our legacy, or the business that you leave behind to your family, or whatever, like these kind of big expressions of legacy. But for me, it's the countless thousands and thousands of people that I hopefully have kind of touched along the way with my music. And it's the anecdotes, it's the stories, it's the emails I receive, it's the letters I receive, it's the conversations at the end of a concert where people come over and share with me their personal story, and how the music helped them, impacted them, helped shift their life in some way. Like that to me is ultimate legacy, where it's not touch, you can't touch it, you can't feel it, I can't point to it, but I know the ripples of my actions kind of, they go out into the world. And maybe, there's someone that is going through a tough time that is healed by it. And then their interaction with their loved ones becomes that much more gentle. That's true legacy.
Legacy? What's a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you'll never see. Name that show.
Yeah, man, I don't know.
Hamilton.
Oh, I never saw Hamilton. I haven't seen it yet.
What? Who are you?
Haven't seen it yet.
Oh my gosh. I've got to work on you.
Still waiting to get a ticket.
That's crazy. Yeah. Legacy. Planting seeds in a garden you'll never see. Some good stuff. You ready for rapid fire?
Sure, go for it.
All right. Rapid fire. Something most people don't know about you.
I never turn the lights on in the bathroom. I keep them on super dim to create a relaxing.
Okay. Can you describe grief in 3 words?
Death as our greatest teacher.
It's a lot of words, but okay.
It's only 5. But okay.
3, 5, tomato. Favorite meal growing up?
Fruity Pebbles.
Okay. Fill in the blank. Life is
wondrous.
What is one song that you would say describes you?
I would say Wild World by Cat Stevens.
A happy memory of Marielle that you cherish and will hold on to forever.
Well, I'm going to say, just because there's so many, I'm going to say the night before the accident, we had dinner together, just the 2 of us, and talked about the future and life and relationships. And we just spent hours talking. And that was my last really deep conversation and memory of her. So I'm going to cherish that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on to Brave Talks.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks for having me. That was lovely. Thank you.
Take care, Murray. This episode is in memory of Murray Hidary. I wanted to share what grief feels like to me, because I think we can all relate to the feeling of it. When I mentioned to Murray in the episode that the last time I had experienced grief was holding my son while he was in anaphylaxis, I came home from this experience and wrote this in my journal. Grief and sorrow are felt acutely and intensely. The feelings are personal and belong to me right now. They cannot be shared over the phone, on FaceTime, or even with my husband. My mother cannot take the pain from me as she did when I was younger. I am the mother now. It falls on me to be the brave one, venturing out and creating a path unique to me and to my family. I must earn this. The grief and anguish, this courage and bravery. They've put lines on my face where there used to be none. Those lines are the roadmap. I've earned them. And after journaling about, this deep, acute feeling of grief and anguish, I decided we needed a happy memory to replace the sad one with. That was really simple math to me. And so I packed up our family and we went to the beach. And it was as simple as that. We were fortunate enough to have nature. It could be anything. It could be at a park or whatever. I just needed to get out into nature. And I remembered the balm of the ocean waves crashing and the soft white sand under my feet. And when I got back from that experience, I wrote that God, because grief throws me into a spiritual place, so God could be a prayer, and God can be at the edge of the ocean, that he, she, it, they, universe, God, can be the happy memory that replaces the sad, grief-stricken one. When I experience grief, I need something to believe in. I reach for things to believe in, and I call that God. You could call that cosmos. You could call that music. You could call that putting a pen to paper. I believe we all need something, but that's also my projection of what I need. And we need these things to replace our anguish and grief and pain. And we need things to bolster our bravery and courage, even if, who knows, it's a false sense of security. And standing there at the edge of the water or wherever we may find ourselves, and God is there with us in the places we go to when we yearn the most for the priceless immaterial things like the health of a child or a parent or a sibling or internal peace, the happiness of a family, love, pregnancy. God is where you find it and where you find yourself. When you go looking, God will be there alongside your prayers. And when you arrive at those moments that beckon incredible bravery and courage, we have to believe in something. I have to believe in something, even when believing in something also means that suffering is unavoidable. God still shows up in those moments. It's always there. The earth underfoot, the snap of the twigs along the path, the unlikely friendship, the remarkable sunset, the wind blowing by your face, obstructing your hearing, the strokes of your fingers through your brave child's hair, the bee sting, the illness, the diagnosis, the pandemic. Wherever you find God, in whatever form, you are celebrated and you are scathed. The wind does not discriminate. The sun sets for all of us, and the bee will eventually sting you if you're brave enough to walk past the hive. We're all a part of this incredible, tragic, miraculous collective story, and we're trying our best. We're failing, we're falling, and we're flying alone together. So another contradictory comment that I wrote, and this is the truth of journaling, right? We don't journal to make sense. We journal to make sense of it all. And so, the contradiction of my thought process was that prayer is an unanswered anticipation. It can set the bar high. I think it's all chance, when you thank God that something went this way or that way, and you are undeserving of the favor. You didn't pray for it. You didn't stand on the water's edge and hope for it or watch the sun sink into the earth with a final prayer. It just happened by chance. We're lucky or we're not. Maybe being educated about a decision is the one thing that changes the outcome. Maybe it's not prayer. So through this journaling process, I didn't finish my thought, or maybe I did because, like I said, they're not meant to make sense. But by writing it out, I did somehow make sense of my thoughts that day. And I wanted to share them with you. And as you can see, my emotional state went from God embracing to something more happenstance and understanding that chance also plays a role in our journeys. And between the two back-to-back entries and emotions and feelings, I was able to make out that I need to believe in something, and that prayer and expecting things to turn out a certain way didn't feel right to me. I discovered that I'd rather focus my prayer energy on reframing situations as learning experiences and directions, leaning into science, but believing in something, radical practicality, and a deep spirituality. If you didn't hear last week, Murray is inviting the listeners to experience a mind travel live, virtual or in person when safe, by visiting MindTravel.com for the upcoming schedule. For those ready for a deeper inquiry into life, he's also offering a free invitation to try Mind Travel Mastery, which I'm also a part of, and you can learn more about that on mindtravel.com/mastery. You can also find Murray on social media at Murray Hidary. Brave Talks is sponsored by Taja Collection Custom Candles. Taja Collection has designed a very special, really beautiful, amazing, Be Pretty Brave candle for all of you listeners who want to light up a beautiful message in your home or send it as a gift to those who could use bravery and courage in their lives. You can find the candle on tajacollection.com. That's TAJA collection.com. And you can search for Be Pretty Brave and you'll find the candle there. Brave Talks is produced by Madeline Inskeep. Video production is by Wallace Cruz. The music is produced by my dear friend Murray Hidary with MindTravel. A heartfelt thanks to these three who support Brave Talks with their incredible talent and gifts. In the next episode of Brave Talks, I speak with my friend Gabby, and we have an inspiring, passionate discussion about the precious healing power of connection. Gabby Pissarilli is the founder of RPT Health and the creator of Regenerative Pathway Therapy. She's a peak performance specialist and a certified physical and emotional mindset therapist. And in this conversation, we pinpoint the small healing steps we can take every day to honor our own worthiness. If you'd like to receive my monthly thoughts and a recap of this month's Brave Talks, head on over to emilynolan.com and click subscribe. Thanks for listening.